Are you ready to get intimate? What is intimacy? And where and how do you find it? Welcome to the Getting Intimate podcast, a daring journey into the heart of intimacy with you, your senses, the whole world, and all the creatures in it. Intimacy can be a pretty wild ride, filled with both longing and apprehension. But what if the vulnerability of intimacy isn't something to be avoided, but celebrated? What if getting intimate is the key to finally coming alive? Discover more with guests from all walks of life and your host, Katarina Wallentin. Welcome to another episode of the podcast, Getting Intimate. And today we're exploring how to get intimate in a relationship where you have the gift and the challenge of spending life, work, and travel together. So as our guide, I've invited two experts on this, Shannon and Max Zoulek, who have been married for many years and co-created even longer. And they currently reside in the UK, but they travel all over the world to facilitate classes on consciousness, bodies, entities, and relationship. So welcome, Shannon. Welcome, Max.
Hello, everybody.
So what is intimacy? What is intimacy for you, Max, and for you, Shannon?
I feel like this is such honestly, a difficult topic to talk about because I think that intimacy is kind of like positively judged for the most part by people. People think intimacy is good and that they should have it. And if they don't have it, they're wrong or bad. And it becomes this very like self-strengthening exercise, like because you can't have intimacy with anything or anyone else unless you have it with you first. It's sort of like you have to pass through the self test before you can like, gain access to the next level. I remember reading a book by a guy named John Gottman, who's like a relationship author. He's actually like a pretty interesting guy. He's written quite a few books, but I think the name of the one I was reading was like 7 Principles for like making a relationship work, something like that. He's written a lot of books, some of the similar title. He has like this ability or like a system through which he can watch a couple interact for like, I can't remember, like 20 minutes. And then he can predict within like a 93% accuracy if that couple will stay together or be divorced. And I read quite a lot of his stuff quite a few years ago, but one of the predictors of a couple that's destined for divorce was there's quite a few, I think he called them like the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, and I can't actually remember. So one of them is contempt, one of them is stonewalling. I actually can't remember what the other 2 are right now off the top of my head, but I remember reading that and being like, wow, I express so much contempt when I communicate with Max so often. And I looked at that and I was like, okay, so what am I trying to achieve by having contempt? Like being disgusted and like, oh my God, I can't believe John Gottman indicates like the more you like, what's an indicator of contempt is when you roll your eyes. And I realized like I did that so much. Like, oh my God. And I realized, I looked at it and I went, okay, so what am I trying to achieve with that? Well, I'm trying to make Max wrong. And I thought, well, why do I want to be married to somebody who I think is wrong? And that really like stopped me in my tracks. And I went, okay, so that's not honoring him. That's judging him. That's making me right, which is also a judgment. So I'm now in the prison of my own judgment in both directions. And I realized that if I continued with that behavior, I would dismantle my marriage. And I really had to look at that for myself and go, okay, so do I want this man out of my life? And that's where I had to get really vulnerable, which is one of the 5 elements of intimacy with self, as Gary, has coined them. I had to get really vulnerable with me in a very uncomfortable way. And I had to let what was real and true for me win out over my ego, what I wanted to be right, how I was educated, kind of like what I learned from my mom, like how to be in relationship. I had to really reassess and reevaluate and be very vulnerable with, okay, I'm doing some stuff that's not working. And that takes up, it's a bit uncomfortable. So intimacy can be really uncomfortable at times because it requires so much vulnerability.
Well, I mean, I have learned all about intimacy originally from Access Consciousness, from what Gary Douglas and Dr. Dane here have said, which is those 5 elements of intimacy, which is honor, gratitude, allowance, vulnerability, and trust. I thought they were a fantastic idea, really great idea. And then I discovered after a while that I had no clue what they actually are for me. So I really had to be in the question. I was with Shannon at this point already. And, my first idea was, oh yeah, you can have them with somebody else. And then eventually I realized, it's required for me to have them with me first. And that's where the journey really began. Like, am I honoring myself? Do I actually trust myself? Am I willing to be vulnerable when I least want to be vulnerable? It's this discovery of being closer to what is true for me, my reality, but that includes everybody else as well, and includes the people that I care about, the people that I care less about as well, includes everything, and me, because at the beginning I definitely did not include me as well. I saw it as something that I would like to have outside of me with others and not just with myself.
Well, I would say I put up the filter of intimacy. I use intimacy, the 5, and I'm Max and I know we're speaking about intimacy, and what we mean is vulnerability, gratitude, trust, allowance, and honor. So when I'm dealing with anything in life, really, but in the relationship specifically, I put up this filter where I funnel everything I do through those filters of honor, allowance. And I'm like, okay, so if one of them isn't intact, I know I'm not where I want to be, period. So when I communicate, I have to honor him, but I also have to honor me, to be an allowance of him and an allowance of me, both directions. So it does take some work, because that is a muscle you have to build. Since we're not really raised by people who teach us how to behave like that.
I just wanted to add because I searched it up, the other 2 horsemen of John Gottman, he talks about as criticism and defensiveness. Yeah.
I specialize in criticism and contempt, and Max specializes in stonewalling and
defensiveness.
So together we are destined for divorce.
I'm 100% sure that if John Gottman watched us, in the first years of our relationship, he would have been, they're definitely destined for divorce. But we would have been in that 7% where he would have been incorrect, I would say. But that's also due to us, where we're really willing to work on stuff and progress and change, which is one of the real strengths, I believe, with relationship and in intimacy. You have to be willing to change. If you do desire more intimacy, you have to be willing to change, because if you're not having the intimacy that you would like, and something different is required, which means a different choice from you.
Well, if you look back to the time you've been together from the beginning and until today, are there parts that were surprisingly challenging for intimacy and surprisingly easy? Things that you actually noted, oh, here it works, or here we really need to look at something.
I would actually say that I feel like I could easily interchange the word intimacy in this conversation with closeness. I would say our experience has been kind of like a spiral. So it's not like we've gotten more intimate. It's we keep on reaching new areas of vulnerability where we have to open up and transform. And it's this continuous ongoing evolving process where I'm like, wow, okay, there's even more choices required to have even greater. I know that something for me that's been going on recently is I have had a lot of unwillingness to be what I would call open, which doesn't really make a lot of sense if you knew me, because I seem like a very open person, but I've had a lot of parts of me that I haven't wanted to, I guess, have touched. And so that's where I would use like the criticism and the contempt to make sure that no one was getting close to to the parts of me I didn't want anyone close to, which is really one of the, I guess, the weird parts about being a person on the planet right now is like we can hide so much of ourselves. And then we have these relationships that can either give us greater access to more of us or solidify or like divorce us more from ourselves. And that's where intimacy becomes, I believe, like this essential critical tool for making sure that every relationship you have, starting with yourself, moving outwards, gives you more of you, not less of you.
Yes, there's certain things that are more difficult. Like for me, I find kindness is one of the easier things, like to have kindness in the relationship. And then the vulnerability is when it's like a thing of being honest with my limitations. That's like fucking hard, if I'm allowed to swear on this podcast. But that's really
Swear away.
yeah, that can be one of the trickiest things for me. And I'm building more trust in myself that I can. And I'm also like that spiral that Shannon spoke about, which is sort of like spirals, but continues to go upwards in how you like symbolized it, is built. Like there's a growing trust that is in the relationship that I've noticed that allows that to occur as well, to have more vulnerability and to continue. There is a lot of times in this relationship, and we've been married next month for 11 years, basically. So even I'm surprised by that. I'm sort of like, wow, it sounds like a long time, but it's like so cool to me that we have what we have. I'm so grateful for Shannon's willingness to change and her willingness to challenge as well, because I know that I require the challenge at times where I'm not being honest with myself. And like we do contribute these things to each other that really assist in building that trust and being able to go further, essentially.
So the spiral, it's like you both have to be moving with a spiral. If one stops, it's not going to keep moving in a way.
Yeah.
And it also, intimacy isn't like a destination you reach.
Yeah.
It's this ongoing process of transformation.
Totally. So you have a very unique relationship in the way that you have what so many people seem to long for, which is you have a relationship as lovers, you have a relationship that includes work, like you're also co-creating, and then you also live together. But I wanted to ask you what it's like, how does it help or challenge when you co-create, when you work together with the person that you're also together with in some kind of love relationship?
There's another guy, I'm going to mention another man that I've learned quite a lot from. His name's David Data, and Max was like right into him like before he found Access, and did a lot of stuff with David Data. And I have read all of David Data's books, and we even did a David Data workshop, which I hated. I had to like really work on myself afterwards. I got like really weirded out. But my point is, David Data talks about something where he says that like when men and women deal with the day-to-day of life a lot, and that could be working together or managing a household, raising children, etc., handling household finances, it can have a neutralizing effect where you lose your sexual charge due to dealing with the neutralizing things of life, like raising children, managing household expenses, dealing with business, so on and so forth. And I would say when Max and I have more time apart, like right now, Max is in Germany. We have like quite a lot of weeks apart this month and probably next month due to just logistics and visas and work and blah, blah, blah. like I think we haven't been around each other now physically for, I can't remember when you left, but like a week.
Yeah.
Oh my God, do I have so much more like attraction and juice, and like I have these like just swelling moments of like appreciation and gratitude and longing for Max that are, absence makes the heart grow fond.
Yeah.
So there is that, like, I do think that there is a practical place for space. I think that when you talk about a couple who like lives together, works together, sexes together, like that can be neutralizing or non-creative. But if you're an adult and you recognize I have to create the space that's required for the energy to flow properly for me and in my life, that is an element of intimacy with self. Like if I trust me right now, what would I choose?
Something that Shannon touched on, but I want to go a little bit further in, is like one of those building blocks for that is gratitude. Like I really know, because we express our gratitude in not just willy-nilly, but there is actually like, I have such gratitude for her and I know she does for me. And we express that fairly regularly, but because it's there, not because we think we should, right? So it's the actual gratitude that is creative, not the idea of gratitude.
And I think that also that gratitude actually creates. So gratitude in itself creates something when you're being
Totally.
it.
And those 5 elements really work together, because if you didn't know there was gratitude, or you didn't have that gratitude in the relationship, you wouldn't have the same trust or allowance or honor or so it's like this essential element of those 5 to have intimacy.
That's so cool.
So if you were talking to somebody who hasn't used a lot of these tools and really would like to kind of allow that spiral to keep moving, what would be some of the like just an easy tool for them to use to try to see if they can get out of their own way and actually get closer to themselves and to other people?
I like joy as a litmus test. Like, are you enjoying? Are you having fun? And I don't mean fun in terms of manic, like this reality version, but the joy that comes from the inside where you're like, yes, for you, because it's different for everybody. And what if you use that as a compass, like the ease and the joy and the glory as a compass for what's working and what isn't working?
Actually, I agree. Yeah, ease, joy, and glory. I think that's a really good measure.
Well, I learned that from you, actually. You pointed that out a number of times. I was like, that's really good. I'm going to apply that.
That's why I agree. I guess I think that there has to be like a prerequisite to your question, which is like, if this is about relationships, like for having a conversation about relationship, I don't think that relationship is all about intimacy. However, relationships devoid of intimacy are far less rich. But sometimes relationship is like a study in practicality. And I'm like, I guess Max said he's a romantic. I would say I'm like a pragmatist, in that relationship, I believe, is more than 50%, if not more than 70% pragmatics, which like no one wants to hear about when they're in their 20s, like, and let alone like some people don't even work it out till they're in their 50s. But if there isn't like that practical cooperation, like relationship is very difficult. And that's one of the things that, like, you have to be able to practically live together, work together, and communicate together for it to work. And then but for that to be so, you have to really be honest with yourself about what you're doing the relationship for. Because so many people have so many secret agendas when they get into relationship, and you can have like these weird multi-layered agendas that you're not even conscious of, that dictate a lot of your behaviors. So when you know what relationship is for you, you're far more congruent with energy flow. And that's when you can allow the universe to contribute to what I believe relationships that contribute to your life how they can function. Because we all know too well how relationships that don't contribute to your life, we know the impact of those. And there's far too few relationships that do contribute to our lives. So we really have to re-educate ourselves about relationship. And I think that starts with, well, what am I doing relationship for? Because anybody who has been in a relationship for any period of time knows that it's work. And does working on that relationship add value to your entire life and to the universe?
How much does sex contribute to the way you create your relationship?
Oh, for us, it's essential. The more frequently we copulate, the easier everything is. The less frequent the copulation, the harder everything gets.
Yeah. And the other piece of that is that we can't copulate for the sake of copulating. Like sometimes, like we will go to copulate and we won't end up copulating, but we create energetically in a way that is kind of like the energy of copulation. Like it's a creation each time. So it's not just putting the body parts together. There's all these other elements that come with it of the closeness and the like having a clarity in the relationship and a movement of creation that actually exists there. Otherwise, copulation for the sake of copulation does not work with us.
Has it always been like that? That the copulation plays like such a big part in it?
I'd say so. But we've developed a lot in, I think, the quality of the energy of the copulation, which includes all the things I just spoke about. Like there was a lot more need for both of us at the beginning and for what it should be and should be for the relationship. And if we didn't have it, what that means and that sort of thing. And now we have a lot more of a broadband sense of that reality and what we're actually creating there.
There was a lot of healing required for both of us in the beginning for many, many years. And I believe that that's one of the elements that sex can be a healing energy. And both of us required a lot of that. So there was like a lot of putting ourselves together and like healing a lot of stuff that wasn't working for, frankly, years. And I also believe that sex isn't necessary to have intimate relationships because you can have really intimate relationships with people you don't copulate with. In this case, we do copulate. And that is definitely something that both of us value, require, and desire. But the sex is almost, I would say, a separate relationship. It's not, it's like its whole own thing that exists that has to be taken care of and honored and allowed. I'd say we almost have like a different relationship where we copulate. And then there's like a different relationship where we do life stuff that has nothing to do with it, where our clothes are on.
But that's what I think, like you said, like 70% of relationships, like living relationships, are often logistical and pragmatic. I'd say there is like a lot of, like the majority of the relationship is about a lot of that sort of stuff. Then there's the fun stuff, and then the sex stuff is like its unique thing.
I love that. Do you have like a child relationship too, where it's like clothes on, sex, and then addition children?
Well, no, I'd say the kids like fall into the other 70% of like life practicalities for sure. But the sex, I would say that the sex is something that has to be taken care of. Like you have to nurture and honor and give space and time to it. It's like a plant. You have to like really take care of it.
We have to be deliberate in creating it.
Yeah, because I think too many, I mean, isn't there such a huge statistic that like people stop having sex after being 7 years marriage, So the sex does have to be created, and really, in my opinion, and through my own personal experience, it's something that has to actually be taken care of intentionally. It's not something that happens as a byproduct of just being around each other.
I think that's a beautiful place too. And so thank you both for coming on. It's such a huge subject that we could go in zillions of different directions. If anyone wants, if anyone wants to explore a relationship with the two of you, can they do that?
Yeah, we do have a class coming up in next month, April 2025. And once that class is completed, it's 6 calls. It'll also be in Shannon's shop on her website, shannon-hara.com, and mine, maxzoulek.com, in the future if people would like that.
Perfect. Thank you so much.